little walk.
Let's do it. See what we can. See what we can find.
There's a lot to see. It's a nice day. We're not back for a few hours. We're going to see what's happening in the paddock, where various meetings are taking place today. Have a little wander around the track and report back a little later on. Thank you for your company for the first 2 hours of this first day of the final pre-season test. Kimi Antonelli is on an absolute flyer, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to head down to Bernie Collins, and when she has finished, Jolyon Palmer and Alex Jakes will be getting very excited about many, many things here in the commentary box. Bernie, take it away.
Thank you, Crofty, thank you. And yes, I'm going to stay in the pit lane for a little while longer. It's so exciting to see these cars just being put together and the mechanics all working. As we see at Haas here, I'm just stood in the front of their garage, and you can see this mechanic beavering away in the front pedal box. You see lots of little elements of the front suspension there, but the big thing to look at is where the push rod in this case, so it comes from the wheel up into that central column. What they're changing there is they're changing what's called an anti-roll bar. So they're changing anti-roll bars, I think, in both the sides of the front of Ocon's car. Now that again is to do with how the car will ride the curves and the reaction of how the weight, as he turns through a left or a right hand corner, how the weight transfers from one side of the car to another. So sort of the feeling of that car, how stable the platform is as he's negotiating any of the corners, or the high-speed corners in particular, that we see around this Bahrain track. But we've seen the mechanics just adjusting that suspension at the front. All seems very calm. Probably, I would imagine, a planned setup change really at this stage. As we've said many, many times, still learning the car, still learning how this aero platform reacts to these changes, how that feels to the driver, how that aligns against what they've done in the simulator or what they're expecting from an aero point of view. Ocon's still in the car, all looking nice and calm really round the back as well. A few mechanics you can just see with torches checking over that engine, looking for any leaks. The cover is off, but nothing too frantic, very, very under control. And you can see there just on the rear wing end plate, the odd clean happening as well. That's just to make sure that any dirt that's been picked up off the track, it's quite dusty here on Bahrain, the cleaner the aero surfaces can be, the better that they will transfer the air and the better that they will produce downforce and much less drag. So just a little insight to things that are happening in these garages as these planned setup changes happen through many, many of the garages just from Haas. And hopefully Jolyon Palmer is now in position and can pick up from that.
He is indeed in position. Thank you, Bernie Collins. Hello, everyone. It is time for the second half of the morning session at Bahrain International Circuit. And we'll welcome you up to the commentary box. Jolyon Palmer alongside me, Alex Jakes. Jolyon, you weren't with us last week, so welcome to Formula One in 2026. You've been trackside already. Tell us your impressions.
It's a good start.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed my morning so far trackside. I think the cars look good.
Yeah.
I've said it on air already. The way that they're darting into the corners now, they're much more rear limited. The drivers are hustling a lot. I didn't see any sort of weird tendencies that I thought I might at turn 4, especially with big lift off into the corners. Sound good. They look good. Drivers are hustling. So far, so good for me.
It was fun standing at the end of the pit lane earlier on, and I was like, well, they're narrower, they're shorter, but it feels like we're picking up very quickly for the season finale of 2025. So we've got 2 hours to go. Great to have your company. Pierre Gasly's on the racetrack, but the Audi's making a din.
Shrill is the word I'd use for the Audi. Every time you hear the Audi come through, you know it's the Audi.
Yes, very distinctive. In the same way that the Honda power unit was a couple of years ago, when you always could hear the rumble of it coming towards you. Our thanks to David Croft and Anthony Davidson for talking you through the first hours of this first day of the final test, as we get ever closer to the start of the 2026 Formula One season. And Alpine with their new power unit. Whoa, big wiggle for Pierre Gasly. We saw Alex Albon off at that corner, wasn't able to catch the car in the way that the Frenchman was. And we'll run you through the lap count and the times It's Charles Leclerc who's been out there for 28 laps. He's done a best lap of 33.7. Lando Norris has done 28 laps. Kimi Antonelli's done 29. 28 for Alex Albon. Pierre Gasly's on his 27th tour of the circuit. Isaac Hadjar on 13. Esteban Ocon first out on green light earlier on, 37. And then it is 28 for Fernando Alonso as Aston Martin try to catch up after a difficult start to pre-season testing in 2026. Hulkenberg has done 29 laps. Arvid Lindblad has done 35, and only 2 for Sergio Perez as Cadillac get back out there.
As we were trackside earlier on. Gasly on a push lap into turn 4. You know what I'm enjoying already in 2026? We've got a new massive screen in the commentary box. Dazzling. We can't be excused for missing anything now.
Yeah,
upgrades all round.
That excuse is over for us. I love the joy of testing. All the details thrown in, even some behind the scenes as well.
It's like being on the front row of a cinema screen where I'm sitting right now. I need to take a couple of steps back.
This is Pierre Gasly heading to turn 11. It's on throttle, yeah.
So I was down there earlier on. Gasly, by the way, on the entry is taking as much curb as I pretty much saw anyone. Antonelli's nailing it. Everyone else is tentative with that entry curve. And I do think that drivers are having to be a bit more wary with that. But the big one there was the snap of oversteer. And go sports for Liam Lawson. It's really tricky to get on the gas so far in this year. The power comes in a massive hit. You have 50% ICE, the internal combustion engine. You have 50% electric power from your battery. When you get on the gas, you're getting combustion engine power when you start to pick up the throttle. Some of that is coming very early, like in turn 4. You can see Albon there fighting the wheel a little bit in towards 4. That's something we're going to see a lot. But some of it's coming early because they're actually using the downshifts and some small revs to spool up the turbo and to recharge the battery. But then actually when you want to deliver power, it's coming in 2 phases. And that with Gasly was him getting on the throttle, but you've got so much turning to do at turn 11. And then you hit 65% throttle, the K kicks in, you get your battery power, and woof, suddenly it's really difficult to control. And we're going to see a lot of those big lurid snaps because it's on a knife edge of when suddenly it kicks in and you get all of that 470 horsepower, 350 kilowatts kicks in. And a corner like this, you have to just keep turning. So normally you just straight line it off. But on these long combined acceleration phases, going to be tricky, but it's going to make it challenging for the drivers, fun for us watching.
Yeah, plenty of moments happening further through the corner as well. And is that, Oscar Piastri was talking about learning things for this new regulation set that he hadn't had to do in his previous career, including junior Formula as well. How quickly from behind the wheel would you get used to that phenomenon? Because we've been seeing the cars move around a lot. Notice George Russell's line out at turn 8, just waiting and waiting and waiting, keeping it pointed in a straight line and moving over later than he would have done in previous years. But what's the learning time for a quirk of a new reg set like this one, for the throttle specifically?
I think in time you'll build it up so it's just innately in you. And probably what will happen is you'll get a driver now jumping in, and Max will jump into a GT car or something, and they'll end up picking up like 55% throttle just as an instinctive driving style, because their brains will become so in tune with that 60-65% of when you suddenly get the massive whack of power. Probably, I think they're still working it out. Already, I think so far today, everything is much cleaner than I noticed last week. We're getting fewer lockups. It's good conditions today as well. And we are getting less of the big snaps. So with every lap that goes by, the drivers are probably calibrating exactly where on last sort of muscle memory. You need to put your foot to 50% and then feed in that crucial zone. And it's a little bit like the pre-start revs of old, or pre-start revs of now, where you have to have your foot so perfectly balanced at roughly 50% throttle to get your 10,000 RPM. Don't go 55% or you'll just spin it up and get massive wheel spin. Don't go low or you'll get an anti-stall. And the drivers get very in tune with exactly where the sweet spot is. I think that will happen fairly quickly now through probably still masses of time in the grand scheme of things for everyone to get used to these cars before Melbourne. But the early phase, I think we'll see some fishtailing, and then very soon the drivers will start to realise where you can deliver the power and where you have to be a little bit more careful.
Here's Charles Leclerc in your picture. A reminder for you about testing times, not meaning a huge amount, but we have illuminated his best lap at the bottom for you all the same, with a personal best in the first and third sectors, fastest of anyone so far in the middle part of the lap.
It was a great pleasure for me this morning being at turn 4 when he pumped that in as well. I thought, well, that looks really good. Again, with all of the cars, you can see the front end, and it's so much better than the lazy front ends that the cars had in the ground effect era. The downforce was supreme, and we are nowhere near that in the high speed. But we are seeing the cars move around more, and we're seeing with the weight come down, the shorter wheelbase as well. They look that little bit more squat, the cars. But I thought Leclerc is able to, with a good front end, which is how he likes to drive as well. It was this corner here. I thought, wow, he's carrying big speed in towards the apex, where before you'd be worried about washing with understeer. A little bit more sedate that time through turn 4, but they look really good.
One team playing catch-up is Aston Martin. Bernie Collins has a line on the all-green team down in the pit lane.
Well, I have a theory more than a line, if you like. We've just been stood outside Aston Martin. We were having a little look around. We were hoping to bring you a little hit on camera, but as we did that, the screens pulled across in front of us in full blockage. But I think what's happened at Aston, just from observing, is that they had a bore scope, what we call a bore scope, out in the back of the engine. So that was the Honda mechanics and engineers sort of using a little camera to look inside the engine and see what's going on there. And I think they've found something quite detrimental, and that sounds like that could stop the car for quite a while if they find an issue internally in the engine. As they sort of looked at the screen, there was a little bit of discussion in the garage about it. Then the screens came across, and I think that'll curtail their running significantly as we just watched the engineers step off the pit wall and into the garage. So I think Aston's running may be curtailed for now at least.
Thank you, Bernie. Appreciate that. Down in the pit lane. Aston Martin really struggling last week. Fernando Alonso's quote was, "We're finding small issues here and there every single run." And of course, as you come to the final pre-season test, when you move out of systems checks and reliability understanding and you move into performance, Aston Martin interrupted again by what sounds brilliantly described by Bernie down there in the pit lane as a technical gremlin that has interrupted their running at the moment. Aston Martin getting used to a new power unit supplier as well this year, Honda Power, for the first time with that team. And they are at the moment in the garage with the screens up. We can see out of the commentary box on the back row of the grandstand here in front.
Worst case scenario for them, they need laps on the board. Came late to Barcelona, did the fewest laps last week, have so many issues, as Bernie said, and they got out there and did a fair few. As I was trackside, just saw Fernando circulating, but it looked like he was in a lot of continuous running mode, so effectively like a race trim rather than more qualifying style efforts of deploy battery and then recharge like the top 3 are. The car, I mean, it didn't look great. It looked a little bit passive, a little bit lazy. And certainly you could tell that Fernando was having to harvest energy on the way into the corners, that those guys that were able to deploy energy through the lap weren't. But this is a nightmare because they are the only Honda-powered team. They're not picking up data. And I was speaking to Ayo Komatsu yesterday and said, how much of what you've done so far through 3 days in Barcelona, 3 days last week, how much are you just simply working out things on the power unit? And how much are you doing your classic front wing sweep, a ride height sweep, mechanical stiffness tests, all of the general sweeps that you'd use this time in testing for? And he said, well, we're lucky because the Ferrari power unit's been bulletproof so far. They're really happy with the reliability of the Ferrari power unit, and the numbers back that up. They've all been running pretty well. But he said, if you're Aston Martin, you're not finding out things about the car because you're so busy troubleshooting issues. You're then, first and foremost, you need to work out what's going on with the power unit this year. And then once you're happy that you're able to run a steady state energy around the lap. You're able to work out how to best harvest the energy. Until you know where you're at with that, then you can't really do too much with the rest of the setup because it's governed by energy around the lap, various other feelings. And I do think Aston Martin, we know they're struggling a little bit, but by not having customer teams to with Honda to learn more about the power unit to help each team, they are having to do all of that work themselves rather than necessarily get into to big style setup. And we know they got Adrian Newey there as well, so they've probably got loads of development possible on the chassis. I'm sure he's conjuring something up, but they are just so short of miles.
Yeah, Fernando Alonso speaking to that, the first official test last week, saying we've got Adrian Newey, so we know the chassis is going to get there eventually. And can they get the mileage before, or is it going to be a season where they come on strong? Like we've seen from McLaren making progress, lots to be learned with these new regulations. Thinking of the sea change that we had a couple of years ago, where we rocked up to Miami and then suddenly McLaren became the class of the field.
You know you're not going to get a dud when you've got Adrian Newey there. Surely all of history has proven that.
Hold on, enter the luck of Fernando Alonso to that conversation.
I don't believe it. You know, it may be that he did join a little bit late into the program. There's all levels of them being a little bit behind the curve of other teams that have had their technical designers working on this for longer than Adrian's been at Aston Martin. But he is not about to forget how to design a car and make the most of any set of regulations. So that part will come. Are we going to see something fall off the back of Mercedes, or just a little bit of a strikeout?
I think we're just looking at the Active Aero, which is a new feature of Formula One this year. Front wing elements are dynamically adjusted by the driver in clearly defined zones around the racetrack. There are 4 of them here at Bahrain International.
Anyone tuning in there would see DRS, wouldn't they? Because the Mercedes and the McLaren and various teams have got that slot gap open. But here we go. The Alpine, the whole top element folds away, and there are different ways that you can now run this this actuation on the rear, and of course the front wings, which are less obvious than the rear wings we're so used to seeing. Big difference with DRS, we should say. This is every straight, and in the straight line designated modes, sections of the circuit, and it's not when you're within a second. So that will happen all the time. That is routine now on these cars, versus DRS being when you're within a second as an overtaking aid. But McLaren and Mercedes back onto that slot gap opening in a very DRS style image. Anyway, we're going to see it here with Lando. There we go. Open it up, and that'll shut at the end of this zone and open again on the next.
Yeah, the zones around the circuit, and we'll show you this on the graphics as we go throughout the year as well. But the main straight, the run to turn 4, the run to turn 11, and as you've just seen with Lando Norris, the run to turn 14. There we go, in the first defined zone of the racetrack, and then get to the end of the zone, on the brakes we go, and the rear wing and front wing element close.
So let's have a little look at this lap. Hopefully we stay with it for a while, because he's into a push lap, and you can see straight away the traction is brutal because of the power they get. We've got 1,000 horsepower, but the torque now of the massively enhanced electric power is just savage. So again, we see the oversteer with turn 4, Lando fighting the wheel, hacking away at it through the apex. We're way down, but we are trying to push here with Norris through 6 and 7, down the hill towards turn 8, low speed, and again fighting the rear. I wonder if the tyres are a little bit past their best. I'm not quite sure what he's on here, but he's having more oversteer and more traction issues than I've seen normally. Nice smoky lock up at 10. That's been another feature so far of this year's cars. Brake locking, big issue. Everyone trying to get rear to the limit of rear under rotation to try and recharge the batteries, but then you mechanically put the balance forwards and we're off again. That was the scrappiest lap we could have possibly joined Lando for, but he's made it through 11 corners, and surely we'll not try and keep that one going to the end. They're having to work for it.
Yeah, very scrappy lap for the world champion. He's been speaking in the build-up to the season about how he's still getting used to seeing number 1 on the car and the timing tower. Earlier on he did a 1:34.0. That was lap 37 of his morning. Early afternoon, I should say. 19 minutes past midday here in Bahrain International Circuit. And we can send it downstairs to Bernie, who's standing by next to Lando's car. So we have a look at his moment off the track, or close to off the track at turn 11.
Yes, just stood, as you were speaking about Lando going off track, we just stood in front of his pit box. And you can see there on the front right tyre in particular, quite a lot of indications of graining on that front right. Both fronts actually, but that looked like a planned pit stop for him after that moment. The guys were already in the pit lane at the point that I could hear you discussing him going off track. But yes, interesting that he's come in there. The tyre's not looking in fantastic shape, which is maybe what leads a little bit to that lack of grip and those sort of incidents that we see on track. But again, all part of the learning of testing at this stage, but pretty calm for everyone else down here in the McLaren garage.
A keen eye, Bernie, because those tyres had done 9 laps when we joined Lando there, and 10 as he came back in. That was his 10th lap, which is a lot on a set of prototype tyres. He was on there, but it looked like they would be on their best, didn't they? And that's, let's not forget, the tyres are new for this year as well, not least those ones, but they're still having the same characteristics as Pirellis of years gone by, really. And these combined loads, traction difficulties, long corners, an abrasive tarmac, is going to make the rears go away even more. So 10 laps on them, no wonder he was struggling even more with that traction coming in.
Charles Leclerc carrying on, currently the fastest driver. Ocon is in our picture at the moment. Just checking the mirror to see if anyone's directly behind. Currently 7th fastest on a 36.4, and trundling around out there for the moment. It's not that for him, so we're just watching what the Frenchman can do. One-time Grand Prix winner, entering his 2nd season at Haas with this increased tie-in with Toyota. It's changed the livery somewhat on that car for this year. And a team that's got great mileage so far. Very, very solid running. One of 2 American teams on the grid now with Haas and the arrival of Cadillac. And Ocon, who finds himself out there on what will be lap number 40. Behind Hadjar, Gasly, Albon, Antonelli, Norris and Leclerc, ahead of Alonso, who remains in the pits, as does Hulkenberg. Lindblad's out there as well, our one rookie in the field at the start of this season. Where do you sit with Arvid Lindblad and making your debut this year? Isn't it an advantage that everyone's got to go back and learn aspects, or is it going to be incredibly complex for a driver progressing after a single season of Formula 2?
So I've been mulling this over in my head.
You knew this was coming.
I knew it was coming. And I think initially I thought, good time to come in, everyone is learning. But then I actually thought, this is, bearing in mind, really experienced drivers are saying this is so complex. People who I would say are some of have the highest brain thresholds of the drivers on the grid. How am I going to say that politely?
I was wondering how you're going to get to that destination.
Yeah. They are saying this is complex and hard work. So for a rookie coming in, you have to learn so much in Formula 1. When I was a rookie coming in 2016, we were in stable set of regs, and the cars were way less complex, and you're still getting up to speed with how things work, with how different parts of the team dynamics are huge. You've got 80 people on the side of the track. You've got a dozen engineers all working on your car, and a complex way through the weekend with 3 parts of qualifying, track evolution, dealing with really sensitive setup parameters. The rest of the experienced guys, they know this is bread and butter to them, how to drive a Formula 1 car, how to operate in the team. So I think I'd rather be still the experienced hands who know a lot of it and just have to adapt to a new car, rather than Arvid coming in, still having to change his driving style to something that he won't have driven before. He's in the same boat as everyone in that camp, but he is also learning a little bit about Formula 1. You could probably argue the toss either way here, because maybe because everyone else is learning, he's learning with them. But I just think coming to Formula 1, it is a world like like Formula 2 is not. Formula 2 is very, very simple in the end. Your teams are small, the cars are not nearly so complex, the racing is hectic, and you just try and keep your head above the water and do a good job when you can. As we see him have another massive snap into the corner, showing again the rear sensitivity. I think I'd rather have the experience and then try and just recalibrate a part of my brain to understand how best to get it out.
A huge task for him, and not with a graduating class of rookies that we had last year, where you'd speak about the rookies as a gaggle, compare and contrast. He is on his own, the 18-year-old, making his way to Australia to make his Grand Prix debut, single season in Formula 3 with some standout wins in wet and dry races. Certainly at Silverstone he caught the eye with his car handling behind the wheel in mixed conditions, and did the double that weekend. Formula 2, and the youngest ever winner, taking the record away from Théo Pourchaire, winning just 17 years of age in the category. He's spoken about the task ahead of him this year and said, well, I'm used to turning up to a championship, doing a single season, then having something new. So he's had to have adaptability as a key career trait making his way through. And he continues on his way on the C3 tyre early in life, and partnered alongside Liam Lawson, who you saw throwing American football about, trying to perfect that spiral throw in the paddock earlier on.
It was a rugby ball last week, wasn't it?
Yeah, he's trying a different sport every week.
So yeah, was cycling through them? Well, maybe he's just trying to see if there's what's he got, another year in his contract? New rules,
other options.
Yeah, can I bounce into another sport if it all goes wrong? I don't know if he's got the build for rugby. I don't know if many F1 drivers do, to be honest.
Not a huge crossover.
He had a good pass on him though.
Yeah,
he's got to have rugby DNA in him, hasn't he?
Yeah, being from that part of the world, mandatory. Let's go to Formula One's newest team now. Bernie Collins is at Cadillac.
Yes, I am at the end of the pit lane, and hopefully you can hear me as the Audi launches out of the end of the pit lane with those high revs, because I'm down in front of the Cadillac garage. First of all, great to see Checo Perez getting in the car at the moment. He's only done 2 single installs in a whole morning's running so far at Cadillac, and rather than some other garages, the focus being around the car, mechanics working on one area of another, the focus here appears to be the data screens on the right hand side. Lots and lots of work trying to understand what's coming out of the data. Not actually that much work that I've seen happening on the car itself. The focus really being to understand the issues that they're having from the data coming off the car, and most of the focus appears to be the engineers on the right hand side of the car rather than in the car or around any particular setup changes. So a lot of work to do for Cadillac to catch up in this morning's running. Like I say, only 2 install laps, no time on the board yet. Checo will really be hoping for something more than that as this test progresses, because they do have a lot of catching up to do, but a lot of studying the data, a lot of work from the engineers, but just not catching up the laps on track. But doesn't look like any particular mechanical issue, at least with the car at this stage.
Thank you, Bernie. Being reported down earlier on in the paddock that multiple sensor issues for Cadillac, which has restricted their running, with Checo this morning returning to the sport after a year out. A hugely experienced pairing of Sergio Perez and Valtteri Bottas, and 2 very, very talented, experienced drivers, and a whole host of Grand Prix wins between them. Pretty useful lineup to make your debut, because Cadillac, starting afresh with a blank sheet of paper, we haven't seen it for a while in Formula 1, and it is hugely, hugely difficult to get up to front-running speed in Formula 1, which, as you saw from the fine margins last year, the end of the old regs, very, very tight field spread.
They've had an okay run of it so far, bearing in mind that if we think everyone's learning, Cadillac are starting from absolutely nothing here, so they're building everything up as a race team. They've had a decent run through Barcelona, through last week, with a few troubleshooting issues. This one is costing them the most at this stage, because all the rest of them, I feel like the rest of the teams are starting to understand the car and leaning on a little bit more. And I do think this week we're going to see more executed performance from the rest of the teams as they fine-tune where they're at, get more out of the battery in terms of consistency, so they can press on and find more about the car as well. And if you're stuck in the garage, I think this week is not the one for them. So I was looking at testing last year. Every year we get to testing, and you know, the old adage, doesn't matter how fast you are, it just matters how many laps you do. The king of testing is the one with the most laps. And I've not often bought into that, to be honest. So then I looked through last year, I thought, let's have a little stat. Bearing in mind we know how that panned out now. So who did the most laps in testing last year? I put you on the spot, have a punt.
I'm going to go for McLaren.
No.
Okay.
McLaren was 7th. You'd say, oh, not a great week of testing. But there was only 3 days. But, oh, not great. Are they on the back foot? The least of anyone was Red Bull.
Wow.
Who took pole and won the 3rd race. And again, you'd say, oh, that's a bad week for Red Bull. The most of anyone was Mercedes. Then Haas, and then Racing Bulls. And then Alpine, 4th. It had really no correlation last year to how the performance was, how who racks up the most laps. But this year, I think we're in a different territory. Last year, it was stable regulations. The teams already had such a good idea on the cars from 2024, 23, and it was all a build-up of 4 years. So that's why Red Bull could do not many laps, but know where the baseline of their car was. McLaren had the best car by far at the start of the season. 7th most laps, they weren't bothered. This year, everyone is starting with a new car, new design. They need to find lap time in some way. They don't know how they're going to do that. They need to work out the new power units, which is the biggest headache for everyone so far in terms of extracting performance. So this year, I do think, whilst I've debunked the recent years, this year I do think is going to be a lot more important. So when we sit here in 12 months' time and we talk about the most laps, we'll see how accurate that comes to be. But for Aston Martin, for Cadillac, for those that are not putting in laps, this year, more than any others, I think you're going to be caught out.
Another lock-up down to turn 10, hundreds of them across the course of the 3 days of the first official test. More in the opening 2.5 hours of this one, and just a feature of the balance of the braking distribution, how much comes from the power unit, how much comes from the physical brakes themselves, and the drivers getting used to that as well as they scrub off the speed. Downhill braking into turn 10.
It's always been tricky. That's always the lock-up corner, one of the most, I'd say the most abundant lockups. That doesn't really make too much sense, probably.
It works, it gets you there.
Okay, let's do it.
It's not your finest work, but it gets you there.
Yeah, if you want to see a lockup in Formula 1, go and stand at turn 10. That's what I'm trying to say. Probably on the whole calendar, because you're braking in turn E, come over a crest, as you say, slightly downhill, braking through turn 9, a little bump there as well, and then you've got to slow it down for turn 10. And we have seen so many of those all the 3 and a bit days now of testing, and Hulkenberg there with another one. You can hear on the exit when the energy is coming in. It sounds like a vague Formula 1 car, and then you get the little bit of a whine as the electric motor kicks in on the way out as well, and that's a huge part as we see Checo jumping into the car, and hopefully they've managed to fix some issues and he can get some sensible running in.
That'd be big for them, having been restricted to 2 installation laps the entire morning. Just being held, ready for a suitable slot out on track.
You hear the revs building. That was a McLaren taking off at the end of the pit lane.
Very, very loud out there. The McLaren building the revs. And heading out. Lando Norris in the car.
Long old hold, isn't it?
It's not a very big... It's unusual to see. That was the thing doing green light earlier on. Normally there'd just be a gap there. Oh, the 11th team. So more fighting for position in the pit lane, and happily for Formula 1's newest outfit, out onto the circuit, goes Sergio Perez.
And no practice start, straight out, is it, for Checo? Take no chances, get the car onto the circuit, and Cadillac hopefully started their meaningful running for today, but they've lost a good 2.5 hours so far. And if the hold was just to get temps in the right window, to get the turbo firing as well. Of course, no MGUH, which been spoken about quite a lot. The big change for this year and the battery side of things, you had the MGUH, the MGUK for the last 12 years, 11 years, and that's now gone. So the MGUH, I think probably a lot of people now are realizing how important that was in the electric motor last time, in the last set of regs. Managing to spin up the turbo, managing to really make a smooth deployment of that battery power, and now with that being removed, it's become a much more sensitive area of development, of understanding for the teams.
And the active aero, which, well, I imagine we'll get used to very, very quickly. It's still a bit of a novelty to see the front wing element moving at exactly the same time as the rear wing element. Running you through last week the new features. Recharging going on with the rear LED light as well as he carries on.
I think we'll get. I already feel like I'm used to active aero.
Yeah,
It's not going to be a game changer. It's just something that happens on the Formula 1 cars. We'll see it here as Checo launches in. There we go. There we go. There. Part into the straight line zones, and we're into straight line mode. The slot gap, and then that closes as he hits the brakes, much like DRS of old there. But it is, of course, the front wing and the rear wing. But that will be every lap whilst you're on full throttle in those zones. The wings will pop open. Whether you're attacking, defending, whatever's going on, it's just part of Formula 1 in 2026. Different ways, engineering-wise, there's plenty going on in terms of executing it best. Development parts, there's different ways, that, as we've already pointed out, different ways the wings can activate. But in terms of a driver tool, that is just going to happen in the background.
Cadillac running Ferrari power for the first couple of years before developing their own power unit. Joining the raft of manufacturers that we have. This distinctive split livery that they've got, slightly asymmetrical, but standing out. Announcing themselves mid-Super Bowl with an advert. And announcing themselves to the Formula 1 grid as well. Much talked about entry for the 11th team. See how quickly they can get up to ultimate pace. But it's going to be some task to start from scratch. Split across different locations that they're in. All possible now with the remote working, but still difficult to coordinate teams in different places. And happily, he's able to get out there. And don't worry about the lap time at this stage, just all the running, vital for Perez and his Cadillac team. Ahead of him, Lindbergh continues until he got to his 51st lap and returned to the pits. Hulkenberg is out there now to add more to his 36. In the pits as well with an issue, Fernando Alonso. Looked like a problem for Esteban Ocon, who trundled back as well. He's not re-emerged since. Isaac Hadjar remains in the pits. Out lap for Pierre Gasly, we've seen him running as well. Out there at the moment as well is Alex Albon, who's just crossed the line past our commentary box position. And then Antonelli on an out lap as well for Mercedes. Lando Norris heading round. And his best lap of the day is 1:34.0. He's just under 1:39.4 to show you what stage of running he's in. And the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc remains in the pits. Bit of flow viz on the Audi in the background. Dramatically different side pods from the shakedown to test one. One of the visual changes that we saw. Ferrari bringing updates as well, including the diffuser that Ruth was taking you through earlier on the broadcast. Right out of turn 13 into the fourth and final active aero zone. Straight mode for the active aero, and then there you go. Need all the downforce in turn 14, so the elements returning to their typical positions.
Jump back on it out of the final corner, and Perez will get a lap on the board, but we are miles away from from competitive running at the moment for Cadillac. Antonelli straight on at the first corner. Seen much better braking consistency from the teams generally so far today than we saw last week, but still that turn one big braking zone tricky. And there are a few things that make the braking very, very tricky so far in this generation of cars. You've got everyone trying to brake with a lot of basically I'll be on the limit of rear locking. Let's see what Antonelli had. This is going to be a front lock. Yeah. Pretty classic front lock there for Kimi. So hits the brakes at about 150 meters. Wasn't having a massive lifting coast. So that was quite a good attack onto the lap. But you have got a lot of different speeds going on. So you've got, as always, you know, bumps, wind direction, natural things that can make cars more liable to locking up. This corner is the classic lock-up corner, and all of those things still apply. But now, having variable speeds into the corners is making the drivers' lives very difficult. So one moment they're arriving 10 kph quicker because the battery is deployed a little bit more efficiently down towards turn one, or they've started the lap slightly later, so they're still deploying in towards the corner, or they're on a super clip where they're harvesting energy from a long way out, or they're lifting coasting, and the consistency of approach to the corners is really not there at the moment. So what everyone is wanting is consistency from your energy deployment, and then from your drivability of the car, basically, so the drivers know what they're doing, and then the software in the cars knows when to deploy energy as well. And as soon as things go away from the norm, it becomes difficult for the drivers, and then the cars start doing more erratic things in terms of delivering that energy in this infancy of the 2026 rules. So I'm seeing a lot of lockups based on entry speeds being different, but also because of the way that the cars are braking and decelerating. So everyone's trying to put more emphasis on the rear braking capability to get more out of the MG UK to basically generate more to the more energy to the battery in that phase. But the more you do that, you then have to mechanically wind the balance to the front. Otherwise, you're going to have major rear locking. You're going to be oversteering like speedway into the corners. It's not going to be drivable in a Formula One car. So it's trying to find that balance. And in between it all, we are seeing a tendency for these cars to be pretty difficult on the brakes. So we're seeing a lot of mistakes there.
Kimi Antonelli continuing after that error into the first turn, walking you through the variety of different speeds into the braking zones drivers will have to get used to. In all honesty, it didn't really feel like we needed testing at all last year. Felt like very, very early, felt like first round practice.
The numbers proved it almost.
But this year, every minute and every run, they're learning something. As we saw on board with the Italian teenager.
It's what stable regulations gives you, and when these are, I do believe, the most extensively changed rules in Formula One's history, basically, certainly in my time of watching. And so it's understandable that everyone is still learning things because the cars are different, dimensions of the cars are different, the tyres are different. We've barely spoken about the tyres, but if this was last year, we'd all be saying, oh, the tyres are different. How are they all going to learn? But it's such a non-event at this stage because everything else is even more different. So it's just so crucial. I remember 2014 testing. I was racing in GP2 at the time, so I was just watching on and seeing that unfold with probably the other major rule set of regulations. 2013 into 2014, hybrid engines first came, and everyone was scratching their heads, thinking, "What on earth are these?" A lot of unreliability was there in the first races.
Yeah, it's a good job we weren't doing that test session live.
The Renault power units could barely get out the garage, could they? It was extraordinary. Everyone getting their heads around. But then I had my first taste of a Formula One car at the end of that year, and I drove the Force India in Abu Dhabi, and it was so well dialed in. You wouldn't believe that 9 months earlier
It was the same formula.
It was the same formula. It was the Mercedes power unit, which maybe helped because that was the dominant one at the time. But it was a pleasure to drive. The systems were on board, and it was all good and consistent. And the way that the development came in that year was astonishing. And as we see Antonelli just have a moment over the curbs, nothing too dramatic there, just missing a bit of front end for once through an apex and then getting a load of oversteer. But that just came because of the understeer and how wide he went. there are so many amazing brains in this sport that we are just in the early days of these cars running, and things will change so quickly. Probably the pecking order and level of performance can change as well.
Looking forward to the journey all the way through to the final round of the year. 24 races, a new race in Madrid, and the season finale in Abu Dhabi in December. Right now, let's go downstairs to Bernie Collins, who's at Red Bull, I believe.
Yes, indeed. Back again at Red Bull, still with my wall of mechanics in order to protect the car as much as humanly possible. But this car hasn't been out in the last hour and a half. Hajar, I think, has only done 13 laps today total in that car. Now, he is in the car in the afternoon, so that is some small saving from his side. They've been working a lot around the rear of the car, as we've discussed many times, and what I believe they are doing is they're flushing the coolant through the radiator system. So on the right hand side of the car, hopefully, you can just about see a little tube coming out from the roll hoop and into the top of the radiator, and then another little clear tube going from the bottom of the radiator back through the roll hoop into the flushing system that they're using on the right hand side of the car. So seems to be a coolant issue with this Red Bull, and they appear to be flushing through the radiator, the coolant system, the liquid that's in there, in order to try and improve performance or find a leak. And then finally, if you can see it over on the very far left of the garage, a big jug of green liquid. That's what they've been draining out or putting back in to this coolant system in order to try and get to the bottom of the issue that they've had this morning that has severely curtailed their running for a Red Bull that looked so on form in the previous tests. A few niggles starting to show in this one. Back to you guys.
Thank you, Bernie. Appreciate the update down there. Yeah, only 13 laps for Isaac Hajar, and not for a while now has he emerged from there. And Bernie showing us the reason why and the procedure they're going through.
Hajar lost a lot of running last week as well, didn't he? Was it full day in the car that he had on day 2? Or maybe his half of the day anyway, but he lost out quite well. And talk of Arvid Lindblad and the learning curve that he's going through as a complete rookie, but Hajar's only done 1 year, and now he's switched teams to go to Red Bull alongside Max Verstappen. And I know there was a train of thought that said this is a good year to go up against Max because we're away from the last generation of cars that he had under lock and key.
Can I contend there's no good year to go up against Max?
I think everyone's deciding that Max is pretty good in any car at any time. And certainly the Red Bull, it has looked competitive from what we've seen in the circle of different teams pointing towards the others as favourites. Max and Red Bull have been spoken about, and they are dialed in, which is going to make Hajar's life tough. Let's have a look at this lap from earlier on then with Charles Leclerc. I saw it trackside at turn 4. Haven't seen the rest of it yet, so we will see him coming through turns 2 and 3. Oh, there we go. The traction is really difficult, and again you're loaded up with lateral G coming through there as well. So we are derating into turns 1 and 4, not dramatically on this lap, as he's deploying energy the whole way through. This car was floating through the high speed a little bit more last week, but they've managed to dial in a bit of a better balance, and it's fairly well planted. Again, the front end good in the low speed as well. He's able to get on the gas up the hill. This is the tricky braking 9 and 10. Extra downshift quickly with a short shift dealt with on the exit of turn 10 into the faster corners. I'm interested in these next 2. So he's not abusing the curve on the way in. Traction tricky. Let's listen in. Yeah, it is a bit sedate through turn 12. Washing wide with understeer at 13. You just have to harvest the battery at turn 12. It's not worth deploying battery going through there flat out, because you need it for this section of the circuit to get out and down this long straight, and then see what you've got left out of the final corner. He's got some steering still to do as he's trying to deploy that power out of the final turn. But overall, looks a really tidy lap, I think, from Leclerc. A little bit of harvesting going on at the end of the long straight, so 1 and 4, not absolutely dramatic, and it didn't look massive trackside. And again, you can see that nimbleness, the way that the cars can turn into the corners and have that front end with the lighter cars, 32 kilos lighter, plus whatever fuel they've got in at the moment. but also the shorter wheelbase makes them all a little bit darty. That's making the bigger difference at the moment.
Charles Leclerc pointing out our first week of testing here that he felt that Mercedes were not showing their true hand. We did have a strange situation last week where everyone was talking up their rivals, which for Formula One, really weird. Really weird. No, they're faster. No, they're faster. No, they're faster.
There's a lot going on, isn't there? There's a lot still going on. We haven't touched too much on compression ratios, but there's a little bit of that going on with Mercedes power units behind a lot of that chat, and I think that's part of the reason that Ferrari and Red Bull particularly think that Mercedes are holding something back. Antonelli, I think he's over track limits there into turn 11. He takes more than anyone else, and he's obviously not too worried about unsettling the car into that corner. Quick corner as well, but they're still able to ride the curves. So Ferrari and Red Bull both think Mercedes are hiding something on the power unit. Mercedes are saying, hey, we're not. It's Red Bull that are the quickest. If you see how consistently they're able to deploy their energy around the lap, that is frightening, the amount they're able to recharge. We have seen visibly the Red Bull, certainly in the hands of Max, able to downshift more. They're really aggressive on corner entries. That will help you to recharge. So, you know, there are visual cues that we can see that back that up. But you just don't know at this stage how much anyone is holding back. The only thing really we can go off is how the cars look on track. And I would say a lot of them, that front pack, all look pretty good. There's no really nasty handling characteristics that we're seeing. They look similar. And it is small margins, isn't it, at the top? A few tenths between the Ferrari, the McLaren and the Mercedes.
This is on board with Lando Norris. He's heading to turn 10. So I wonder what's going to happen. Ah, yes, another lockup.
Oh, he was plucking upshifts coming out of turn 8, so he obviously had good deployment out of that corner. He's arriving a little bit quicker. You could also feel the bumps with that onboard camera as he turned into 9, and then the lockup came just after. But I suspect with still the stiffness they're running in the suspension, that there was plenty going on through that suspension, and didn't have best contact patch on the front left tyre. Always gets unloaded into that corner. Give us an overtake.
Here we go.
Oh, no!
And backs out. We'd never go, oh no, in a race commentary. Oh, the socials would light up the joy of testing. No lunge to the inside of the Haas for that.
You got to send it from there, surely. That's what we want to see. Drivers getting close. The slipstream effect wasn't massive, and bear in mind, if that was years gone by, if we were in testing, the Haas would be opening the DRS like the McLaren, but in race trim you would have the DRS advantage. The closing speed would be massive. We've got overtake mode, which is going to be the new version of DRS, which is going to be controlled on the battery now, which will allow the car behind to just deploy energy longer on the straight. So we will see some of that closing speed, but the slipstream wasn't massive. So at that rate, he's got to be making a lunge at the braking zone, which is what we like to see.
Only testing, but you can tell we've not had a race for a while, and we were looking for a move to the inside for Lando Norris.
But he'll also be feeling that in the car. He'll know what modes he's in, and you know, if the Haas was in something else, maybe Ocon was winding up for a full deployment lap, and Lando, whoa, smoking it into the pits.
Yeah, say goodbye to that set.
Oh, I thought he was going to nail straight over the weighbridge there at the FIA. McLaren the first garage in. Lando fully locked up. When you're locked up, you're not going to be turning. So off he went, spewed it to the right, and managed to slow it down in the end. But it's all part of testing. No harm done, apart from to the tyres, which will be rooted and come off.
Back to the garage for him, practicing that pit entry. Yes, Van Ocken going past your picture now. Had a slow trundle back to the pits, but he's got back out there. This is what it looked like on board.
Oh, this could be fruity. So we peel off to the right-hand side, practice the pit entry. Weighbridge was miles away. It was fine. You've got to be going a lot quicker than that to find your way over there. But full lock up, and it's just a driver trying to push the limit of braking. And again, we're seeing the propensity of these cars to have big lockups. That looks like it's a massive power unit failure, the amount of smoke coming off the back there.
All the mechanics darting out going, what's he doing? Oh, there we go, it's fine.
Where's he off to? I remember, you can't do it on a lot of pit lanes, but I remember in China when I was reserve, we had Pastor Maldonado. Do you remember it in the race? And he had such a big lockup coming into the pits, the famous pit lane entry that Lewis Hamilton lost the 2007 title on. Yeah. It's a difficult one. You come in, you turn left, and there was a gravel trap that's now gone. But it was one of those ones where you can lose a little bit more time, or there's more to gain. And Pastor came in, had the lockup, and ended up basically behind the Armco in the middle of the race there.
What, and doing a sort of spin turn
push back
and then turn right into the pit lane.
Yeah.
Instead of left.
Pit stop, great. Pit stop loss, not so great.
I always think back to Sao Paulo and Kimi Räikkönen getting lost when you reference drivers going beyond the Armco.
One of the all times. I could watch that any day.
Tries to take the old track, the old 1970s track, finds us a gate, spins it round.
In the middle of the race.
Nearly out onto the street. Unbelievable, that clip.
Because he'd been through there like 15 years earlier or something.
And it was open.
It was there, yeah. Sometimes knowledge is not good. Better for the rookies.
And eventually returning and rejoining over the grass. Here is Charles Leclerc. His first pole position around this circuit. Robbed the first victory that year by a mechanical issue that he went on to secure in Belgium. The driver hoping a more competitive Ferrari than last year, where he was on pole for a Hungarian Grand Prix in strange conditions weather-wise. One seen compressed into the same battle for the first 5 positions, and he was able to do just enough to take a shot pole position. Despite a strong run and many podium appearances, no Grand Prix win for Ferrari. And a reminder for you, they are on their longest barren run without a championship trophy in team history.
Started well this year, often very good in pre-season testing, and come close to championships. 2024 went right down to the wire, didn't it? Just lost out to McLaren. Last year was a disappointing year, which they'll be hoping to forget quickly if this car is as good as some of their rivals say that it is. And it looks good on track. We do not have a clue what the times mean at this stage. And when we're dealing in tenths at the top, you could easily drop a second by taking fuel out. There's engine modes will make more than that. There are so many different ways that the teams can play with their performance, so only they really know where they're at. But certainly in terms of the handling characteristics, we saw the best lap on board. I was trackside earlier on, and I think the Ferrari does look very tidy. And they've done well to make the cars, I don't know, power unit wise, the drivability is difficult. You get a load of power delivery quickly, and we are seeing drivers fight the traction zones. But in terms of the handling on the way in, I think a lot of the teams have done well to find balance quite quickly. We haven't seen sort of nasty trends that we saw in previous years. I remember watching the Mercedes a couple of years ago when, back when Hamilton was driving for them the last year, they hit the track, and the first day you're thinking, wow, this thing snaps into big oversteers when the drivers aren't expecting it, and it was really inconsistent. When they could put a lap together, it was okay, but a lot of the time it was the diva of the car, and you just saw this nasty, snappy car. So far, in terms of the front runners who've done more quali sim styles this morning, Leclerc, Norris, Antonelli, Hajar yet to really follow suit, but they've all looked tidy.
Let's check in with Nico Hülkenberg. We spoke for so long about Sauber becoming Audi. Here they are in Formula One with their own power unit as well. It's just them running the power units, and the same thing we were talking about Honda with Aston Martin. Just the one team and the one team's worth of data for Mark entering Formula One with a glittering array of championship trophies from other disciplines in motorsport.
Massive learning curve for Audi, though, taken over from Sauber. But the power unit side, all being new, is such a big change. And again, they are the one team that sound different as well in the power unit in the back. You can hear the revs coming. You can hear when they're spiking, trying to find a bit of throttle mid-corner. Hulkenberg's on a push lap here, so the active aero working as the top flap drops down and then picks up as he hits the brakes for turn 11. You can see him working the wheel like everyone else in the mid-corner of 11. It still looks quick through 12. He's blended out of the throttle a little bit. It's very stable for him there as he's making sure he doesn't over-deploy through that section to, like everyone else, keep some battery left for the end of the lap. Power sensitive here. Looked like he was fighting the car a little bit into turn 1. The rest of it looks better for Hulkenberg. It looks like it's fairly together. See if he can keep deploying all the way to the line and put a lap time that's sensible on the board.
Audi, another team with a slightly different approach. You highlighted McLaren slot gap, traditional style rear wing element. The Audi one just flattening, as you would have seen across the course of the lap. Similar to what Alpine are doing with the rear wing.
I quite like that as a design difference across the cars. It's so visible. There will be obviously method in all of these teams going their separate ways. Generally, the big teams have all gone for the slot cap still. The midfield teams have gone for this approach, which is to drop the top flap down, which looks like an old Monza spec, doesn't it? And the teams are, wow, big snap for Gasly in towards turn 1 once again. Not unlike a lot that we've seen, trying to back the car as much as you can into the corners, get that recharge going, and then give you some more battery coming out. Monza spec on the straight, but teams are talking about the overall downforce level being like Monza spec from last year as well when they're going through the corners. So that's how much has come off the cars from last year's whopping downforce at the ground effect to this year. They're still getting downforce from the underside of the car, but the Venturi tunnels and all of that, get the car planted on the ground and as stiff as possible, that's all changed.
Yeah, way more clearance than the necessity to run as low as possible, seal the air and the floor as tightly as possible to generate the most downforce. That has reverted to the more traditional spec that we had before 2022.
It looks like Gasly again fighting the car. This is not an easy lap for him. He's done plenty of laps on this tyre, so I think again that shows when we're into the race runs. There's various talk after last week of will the tyres be better this year because the drivers are having to back off in some of the high-speed turns. Of course, they're slightly narrower as well, particularly on the rear end. Or will they be worse because A, the power, and B, the sliding that they're going to get? And so far it's pretty hot. Of course, when we come here for the race, it's going to be cooler and under the lights, but we are seeing those on consecutive laps circulating, struggling a lot more with, let's say, the braking that Pierre had into turn 1. On a fresh set of tyres, that might be masked, and it might be an efficient way to get through, but as soon as you start losing the peak from the tyre, you slide on the way in, and it starts looking pretty scruffy. We can have a look on board. Just at the end of braking, I think it's a final downshift that did it there, so it looks nice and dramatic from the outside. It's a little bit on the way in, so he's braking, turning, and then that final downshift just gives it a spike of overrun. Trying to get some charge into the battery efficiently, but it's just too much at that stage, and then you spike the tyre temps, and same old story with regards to the
Day 1 of Test 2, as we have 3 days of running before we get to the end of pre-season and round 1 of 24, the World Championship, starting once again at Albert Park in Melbourne. Wonderful place to start the season. You are watching Esteban Ocon on track for the moment. Driver who had his run this morning slightly interrupted, and Landa return to the pits, but not as dramatic as, say, Isaac Hadjar, who's only completed 13 laps. Earlier on in the session, Checo Perez in the Cadillac had only done 2 installation laps. Cadillac struggling with the sensors on the car. That does appear to be an issue that they've got on top of, because he's now up to 17 laps. Hadjar has not appeared on track for well over 90 minutes now, so interrupted morning session for him, and he remains stuck on 13. It's 50 laps for Charles Leclerc, 49 laps for Lando Norris, 53 laps for Kimi Antonelli, 41 laps for Alex Albon. Pierre Gasly, who we've been watching around the circuit, has managed to go over the line and complete 43. And they're line astern, getting a bit of information of what it's like to run in the dirty air of the car in front. The 2 drivers line astern from northern France, Gasly and Ocon, who memorably shared a podium for Alpine a couple of years ago.
All useful knowledge for these guys as well. Figure out what the car's like in dirty air. Hopefully reduced. Hopefully for everyone, the dirty air is reduced and we get close racing. And they're all going to be figuring that out. Of course, we've explained no DRS, so they're going to have to get close if they want to make some overtakes. The new barge boards, the anti-wash barge boards.
The anti-barge boards, yeah.
Try and get the air around the wake of the cars, so that they're not disturbing as much air for the cars behind. We'll see if they make much of an impact. We'll find that out. They might find a little bit out now. We'll find a lot out in Melbourne.
Yeah, very much so. Looking forward to that immensely as well. Different track as well in terms of recharge. Could be a test for the drivers. That circuit, of course, in recent years made a lot faster than it was. Some of the heavier braking zones reduced with that reconfiguration of the circuit. And another challenge for all the teams to wrap their head around. Oliver Lindblad going there. The 18-year-old ready to make his debut in Formula One. Teammate to Liam Lawson. Lawson, who had to wait until the Qatar Grand Prix for the thumbs up that he would continue. Get a second full season. Sporadic run of races across the board. Lindblad looking forward to that. And the distinctive white rims of the Racing Bull, making them stand out.
This year we might see bigger differences. I do think this year we might see bigger differences track to track than we've seen in the last set of regulations. Change massively track to track. One thing that's not going to change massively track to track are the wings, because you no longer really need a low downforce wing for Monza or a high downforce wing for Barcelona. This is basically now with active aero again. We'll see. It's now a wing that fits all. So high active aero in Monaco. There's too many corners and not enough straights to use it. So maybe somewhere like that, we might see something different for the teams if they want to put everything into a lot of resource in the cost cap era into a Monaco special. But generally, we won't see Monza spec wings, Baku spec wings, Vegas different wings. So, but what we will see is, I know Anton and Crofty were talking earlier on about small turbo v big turbo, strong recharge v a team that's not able to recharge as well, or being able to spool up the turbo quickly, or various natural traits that the teams have all got, bearing in mind they've had a blank canvas and come up with different solutions to things. So Albert Park, I'm thinking that is going to be a fairly difficult circuit in terms of recharge. Now that, as you mentioned, they got rid of the chicanes, that blast from turn 6 through to turn 9, it's a long old way at high speed. You then flash through the left and the right, and you're onto a fairly long straight again before turn 11. So it's also not a circuit where there's massive braking zones, where it's easier to recharge in the braking zones. We've seen teams take extra downshifts and try and manufacture that little bit more regen as well. So Albert Park could be tricky, but there are going to be other circuits where it's not going to be too tricky at all. If it rains at times, it's going to be a lot easier. Big, nice drift from Leclerc out of the final corner. He's on consecutive laps here on a race run. Yeah, if it rains, you'll have a lot more time off throttle. You'll have a lot less time deploying energy on full throttle as well, so it will change the game, and that might suit some teams who have got strengths in one area, weaknesses in another. So it might be a little bit more of a season where the form guide can flip race to race, condition to condition. Somewhere like Monaco could be a massive outlier this year, where a team's natural strength is just not able to be used at all if they've got a particularly efficient active aero. Doesn't matter in Monaco.
Charles Leclerc dipping a couple of wheels at the exit of turn number 4. Yeah, no straight mode in Monaco due to the nature of that circuit. Didn't want to take the risk with the run through the tunnel, understandably so. And so that's going to be different for us to enjoy compared to the rest of the season. 50 minutes to go until we get the lunch break.
Was DRS into turn 1, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But no straight mode at all.
I mean, it didn't really do
this year.
anything.
No, well, not much does it. Does it? Let's be honest.
Maybe it will this year. Maybe this is the year that the Monaco Grand Prix will be a mass brawl for the lead with places swapping lap after lap.
There's an ex-driver who remembered his media training halfway through the answer.
Honestly, I love Monaco, so I am such a big fan. I know people are split on it, and we don't often see great racing, let's be honest about it, but I love Monaco, the challenge of it.
And I think Monaco qualifying.
It's amazing.
It's unbelievable.
And I think with this generation of car, it will be potentially even more amazing. You know, they're lighter, they're dartier, they've got front end. They're gonna have plenty of recharge because of the braking time, the time off throttle. They're gonna be able to deploy what they want pretty much around Monaco. So Monaco qualifying will be as spectacular or more than we've seen, I think, in recent years. They're not gonna have to faff around recharging through various sections, I think, because it's gonna come naturally to them. And then they'll just be able to deploy all of that power that we're seeing light up the rear tyres from time to time around the streets of Monaco. That's epic. Hopefully the race will be good. I still love Monaco regardless.
Replay of a couple of wheels into the gravel for Charles Leclerc. 24 races around the world for this season, including the new race in Madrid, officially the Spanish Grand Prix in Madrid. Used earlier in the week as a contract extension for Barcelona. Catalonia remaining, and it will be alternating with the Belgian Grand Prix, confirmed earlier this week. Going over the line, drivers had good success around Bahrain International in the past, and anything they will be hoping this year with the new power unit, with the new regulation set, allows them to forget the struggles, and they really were struggles. I know we had a little bit of an upturn towards the end of the year, especially in Sao Paulo, but it was a long season for the Enstone-based squad a year ago.
It already feels like it's way behind in the past. And it doesn't matter to them until you walk into the paddock, and you have to remember that they are right down the far end of the paddock now in terms of the pit garages and the pit building. Only Cadillac, they are spared last place because Cadillac joined the grid for this year. But it's always an interesting thing when you turn up for day one of a new season to remember, oh yeah, so Mercedes have slipped down, or Ferrari this year are a little bit further down. I'm so used to them being next to McLaren after 2024, and various other teams jumping up the pecking order. Williams now right in the midfield. Alpine, apart from being down that far end of the pit lane, very much set on having a better year. And they put so much emphasis on last year, developing this year's car. They turned off the taps of 2025 really early, basically wrote off the season, and it showed in terms of performance. But this year they are not going to be doing that. We're in this set of regs for a few years now, so they have to get on top of it, and they have to hope that all the work they've done so far with that extra wind tunnel time, more time with CFD as well, to make this car as efficient as possible. Mercedes power unit in the back. A lot of the talk is that that's going to be a good option for them. There's not going to be really anywhere for them to hide if the performance isn't good now. They should have all the tools at their disposal.
Looking down into the garage, Alpine retaining Franco Colapinto as well. Mid-season change. Came in for Jack Doohan halfway through the year. He gets a full year, including pre-season testing, vital pre-season testing. Check in on Pierre Gasly. Slow-mo down into turn 10. And the one-time Grand Prix winner continuing on for his early work in the test. Driver who has now done 48 laps.
Dare we say it, Sam Collins is tipped for a podium in Melbourne. Again, he
loves a bold prediction.
Yeah.
Sam, doesn't he?
I'm not gonna
jump on board that bandwagon, I think, at this stage. And I don't even think they would at this stage either. There does seem to be a standout 4 teams at the front, but very much hoping that they can get to the front of the next pack. And who knows what's going to unfold in Melbourne. If it's anything like last year, you've got to be in it to win it at the end of the race anyway.
That was your favourite race of the year last year.
It was a barnstorm, wasn't it? Was it not yours?
Fantastic. Well, Silverstone was pretty special, wasn't it? Everything going on there. Biblical rain at one point. Hulkenberg somehow getting on the podium. Still one of my favourite moments in commentary. And obviously there are some things that you say as lead commentator where you tick the boxes and you give the information to everyone listening at home. And you're a bright lot, you're watching Formula 1 testing. I imagine if you're watching Formula 1 testing, you've got a high degree of knowledge of the sport, but sometimes you get a more casual listener who isn't aware that Hulkenberg had never been on the podium. Your eye roll when I gave when he was in 4th and I gave the stat that he'd never been on the podium. Wonderful. Wonderful.
Well, there's been a lot of times that eye roll has been correct in my defence. I've heard it for years, and there's always been something that's gone away for him. But it was a great story, wasn't it, of last year?
And as Sam Collins will tell you, if Alpine get on the podium in Melbourne, you know, you get it right, you crow about it, you get it wrong, you hope that no one notices.
Honestly, if Alpine are on the podium in Melbourne, Sam can lord that over for a huge amount of time, and I hope he will.
He's already got the clip that went triple platinum. Absolutely everyone's seeing that. Millions of views. His expression at the end as Hamilton pulled away. Masterful. Masterful stuff, Sam Collins. Okay, 44 minutes to go. In terms of the order, 57 laps for Charles Leclerc. That is exactly a race distance. When we come back here for the 4th round of the World Championship, bang on a race distance for the Ferrari man. 49 laps for Lando Norris, 53 Kimi Antonelli in the Mercedes, 41 for Alex Albon. Pierre Gasly finds himself with 49 on the board. Hadjar interrupted running, only 13. So effectively a session lost in that regard for Red Bull Racing. Esteban Ocon's up to 54. 28 for Fernando Alonso. Not seen him for ages out on the circuit. Screens still up at Aston Martin. 48 for Audi's Nico Hulkenberg, and 65 for the rookie in your picture at the moment. Sergio Perez stuck on 2 for a long time, came out, did a 15-lap run, and now back in the pits.
It's what Lindblad needs, is just loads and loads of laps. 1 minute 40.3 the last time around, so 6.5 seconds away from Leclerc's pace, but he's just on this long race run. Leclerc right now out there running a 39.6 on the last time around, so the pace dropping away significantly on the long runs now. And there's a massive energy difference when you're able to deploy everything from the battery. So you start on 100%, you end the lap on 0% of battery. You're able to just use a lot of that through the lap. You're still getting recharge, and then you use more, but you're on a net deficit. Whereas when you're on a race run, you have to basically use what you charge through the lap. So there is a difference watching trackside and seeing cars on race runs, long runs, where they have to be a little bit more cautious with their energy deployment, saving more coming into the corners, because simply braking and recharging on the way into the corners, as has been the case for years, it's not enough now to keep the battery topped up. It can just run out of energy pretty quickly.
Yeah, having to constantly consider that trade-off, and then teams with the experience, with the understanding, will converge. We'll be back to be talking about tyres all the time.
Yippee!
Slightly thinner Pirelli tyres for this year. I think considering the drag of the car, so they're getting used to that.
There are dark arts all over the place, aren't they? Recharge. Speaking to some of the drivers yesterday, and they were saying they are all trying to work out the best way to recharge. As you know, we're all seeing various methods, getting on partial throttle, a lifting coast. We're seeing super clipping, where drivers stay full throttle and the car naturally derates, so it slows down. They lose the power of the MGUK, and it goes into basically harvest mode at the end of the straight. And there is also, we've seen dramatic downshifting, particularly from Red Bull. And speaking to the drivers yesterday, and some of them were saying they're trying to work out the best way. So they're seeing Red Bull go down to first gear for a couple of corners, and they're saying, well, should we try it? So then they try, and they think it's better. And they're looking then at the rivals that they have with the same power unit, and they're saying, well, hang on, getting more deployment than us, but they're doing different things. They're just in third gear for this corner. We're trying to faff around going out to first gear and unsettle the car and make it nasty. I think it works better for us, but how are they doing it like that? And all of these mysterious dark arts of getting recharge into the car, still the teams are trying to work out the best method. And just because one Mercedes-powered car is doing well in a certain way, it doesn't mean they're all onto that trick, and certainly that wasn't the case. As I spoke to some of the drivers yesterday.
Charles Leclerc, having completed his stint out there for the moment, doing a pull away, and now, as you can see from the attachment of the fans, about to be pushed back into the garage.
Yeah, trying to get a launch from the pit stop there. Trying to dump the clutch, have the turbo ready, and get a little bit of a feeling without having to hit the track again. Same thing's true for Red Bull and Racing Bulls. Both with the Red Bull power unit, looks to be working really well. We've heard Toto Wolff's comments last week saying that they're favourites, they're a second up the road in terms of energy deployment, which is a massive amount if it's true. But that doesn't necessarily mean that Racing Bulls are able to harvest energy in the same way. And someone like Max Verstappen is very capable of dealing with a car that is twitchy on the way into corners. It's been so well documented that he can handle a load of oversteer. He's sensitive to the gear shifts. We've heard so many times him complaining about the gearbox and that, but he seems to be dialed in with taking first gear, running that as a usable gear, and getting recharged with a car that is just dancing around a little bit subtly underneath him. Can Hadjar do the same thing? Honestly, we don't know yet. He's still so early on in that car, and he's had troubles. Here we go. Give us another pass.
Here we go.
Long pass. Surely there's someone on the receiving end of this.
Throw it to someone underneath. Pick someone out, Liam.
Lindblad in the cockpit.
Absolutely sends one.
Sometimes the short ball's the best ball. Play it safe.
He's taking the easy pass. That's on the, it's a support race control tower that he's at.
You know that Friends episode?
Yeah.
Where they just pass the ball all day until someone's going to drop it? Do you think Lawson's been on that for a week now, and he's just still, we've got to keep it going, buddy.
Take it away. Take it away. That's enough.
You're on camera with it again. Put it away.
He's in the car. He is in the car later on. He's not just hanging around to have a look trackside.
He's got a cracking viewpoint there, though,
You've
hasn't
got
he?
the support race pit lane to the right of you down there at turn 10. We'll show you. Love it, this drone shot. So from Liam Lawson's vantage point, that's the drag strip that they've got here.
I'm trying to work out where he is. What building's that?
It's like a. They've got obviously different versions of circuits here. That's another race control tower if they use the shorter circuit. So that's at the start of the pit lane. You want to be on there.
The shorter circuit doesn't use the main straight. That's the main straight.
Yeah,
there.
they've got a shorter version that only uses that one.
Well, I never.
So many configurations here.
I've only been here for 15 years and still working it out.
We had that. I love the outer loop which we ran here in 2020. So
do you remember the outer loop of 2010?
Well, that was officially the endurance version that just seemed to go all the way out and then come all the way back again and rejoin just after turn 4.
Short-lived.
They ran that for 1 year. That's probably a good thing. We ran the outer loop for 2020. Amazing Grand Prix.
That was fun, yeah.
Really enjoyed that one. Like a throwback to just the rapid racetracks of old.
Okay, I'm going to see if I can get onto. I can see him out the commentary box window up there on the.
Give us a wave, Liam. If he did wave, we wouldn't be able to tell.
We'll just say he did.
That is slightly flawed. I'll give you that. Here's Kimi Antonelli in full view of Liam Lawson, and you are watching at home. Wherever you are watching, thanks for joining us for this opening session of day 1 of the second official pre-season test. Kimi Antonelli with the active aero. And 4 zones around the racetrack, which runs to 5.4 kilometers. A little loose as he applies the power. And then down the hill we go. 6 and 7, rotate the car into the hairpin at 8.
So we're into a quali spec push lap, I think, here for Antonelli, whilst plenty of others are into to some race running, hustling on. You can see them. The cars just look way dartier as soon as they're in deployment mode, because they're carrying speed into the corners. They're not able to, well, they're not having to harvest. So we've got the active aero. Let's see how long he carries that. Yeah, it comes right towards the braking zone as well. So we're not into massive lift and coast territory here. There'll be some clipping at the end of straight, but this is an attacking lap with Antonelli. losing a bit of time. Temperature's coming up, and I guess that's making a little bit of a difference as well. The tyres going away, the downforce not quite optimal as it was maybe earlier on in towards, was it 1:30? Nearly lunchtime. Final corner, and we're a little bit wide there with Antonelli as well, so getting on the power is going to be tricky, so he bails out of it and back into the pit.
Track temperature 41 degrees, air temperature is 27. Antonelli back to the pits. Driver with 56 laps on the board for the opening 3.5 hours of running that we very nearly had. Stopping on his marks at the Mercedes team. Mercedes tipped by many in the paddock to have an outstanding year, and rolled up last week and said that everyone else was fastest as they tried to distract any attention from the car and power unit that they have underneath them. Antonelli going into his second season, finished his rookie season really well, didn't he? Got lost in the middle of the campaign, really struggled with the Mercedes switching suspension specifications as he went through, but finished really strong. His race pace in Vegas was immaculate, really impressive. Eventually, after the McLaren disqualified, that resulted in a podium, and then in Brazil, fighting with Max Verstappen all the way to the end, across the line. Pretty fine thing to be doing in your first season.
Yeah, Brazil was immense, and he will take so much confidence from that as well. The way that he was in the summer was, you never want to see a driver in that sort of doom spiral of things going wrong, not understanding how to get performance, doubting yourself, and then you get back in the car and something else completely different goes wrong, or you find a yellow flag at the worst time, and you feel like everything's against you, which Hamilton had as well. Lewis had plenty of last year, whether it was catching yellows, having a lap time deleted in Spa, having a strange spin in Spa as well, which was a pretty bad weekend for both of those two. But just ending the year with something to smile about for Kimi will have given him a nice bit of confidence over the winter to think new regs, hopefully a competitive Mercedes car. Forget all that ground effect that they'd never really got fully on top of. When the car worked, it was great. When it didn't, they were lost and they couldn't be competitive over a full season. This is a chance now for Mercedes to get back to where they were before the ground effect came in, which was either winning titles or fighting for titles. And Antonelli, with a year's worth of experience, I mentioned already Lindblad with plenty to learn in terms of just operating in a Formula One seat. At least Kimi's felt that. He's felt the pressures of, you know, when he brought all his schoolmates to Imola and then thought, maybe that's not such a great idea. There's so much going on here at my first home race. Maybe I didn't need that distraction. You know, you learn these things, and coming into a sophomore season, it's a great opportunity for him. And Mercedes so far do look competitive. Are they the class of the field? We don't know yet, but they're certainly in the mix.
Yeah, he brought all his schoolmates along to Imola, and probably a good job he did that. If he's at the very sharp end this year, that's not going to be possible. Absolute full focus required, but seemed to be very, very comfortable on certain compounds of tyre towards the end of the year. Really, really strong race pace as he moves into his second season. All the reassurance and that bond between driver and engineer built as well. Pete Bonington going from a 7-time world champion to a total rookie. And one of the reasons that Mercedes elected to promote him very, very quickly and straight to the Mercedes team rather than another team, they felt when they brought George Russell to the team, it took him 6 months to get to his potential. So they were like, all right, well, we'll take the 6 months with us rather than place him with another team. Takes him a while to get up there, and then he comes to us, and then he spends 6 months learning our way.
Okay, and back to the Lindblad question as well, really. Yeah. Is he better off coming in as a rookie or not? I can't help but feel that Antonelli is so much better off having that year of experience than if he were going from a Williams to a Mercedes, or just coming in fresh to a Mercedes now. I think that would be a huge amount for him to take on. But having that year of experience, having some good results in the bank, a little bit of favour there, maybe a little bit of time to get his head round if something's not quite right in the first races. You know, he's shown that when things are right, he can do the job. And it means that I think he's in a much better place to start this year, having had 24 races already up against a world-class teammate in George Russell, and they'll still be learning off each other all the time here. Whilst George isn't in the car, he'll be in later on. He's got to be looking at Kimi and thinking, okay, what can I learn so that we're accumulating our knowledge.
One thing that would play a part as well, you're looking at the aero rakes attached to this season's McLaren. Lando Norris behind the wheel, as they understand the air flow over the engine cover and heading towards the rear of the car. Things like Singapore for Antonelli, where he believed he had the pace. It was George Russell on pole, and he admitted afterwards, yeah, I was thinking about the front row. I was thinking about pole position. He's gone through what not to repeat, where he admitted afterwards his emotions got slightly the better of him, maybe a little bit of over pushing on that lap, looking for a front row start that he then would go on to achieve later in the season. He's gone through those exam questions that you wouldn't answer in the midfield.
And look at Norris as well, you know, he's now a champion, but the work that he had to go through to get there, nailing race starts, executing strategies from in the car as well, dealing with pressure, dealing with Max Verstappen, hunting him down, and various moments. Things don't come easily at the front of a Formula One race. You have to work it out. You won't always get it right, but with every time you get it wrong, you learn something. You might learn something about your opposition. You might learn something about yourself, and you just build up that experience to know that if there's a hunt for pole, just relax. Small details will make the difference. Not a massive push, but it is really tricky when you're in those final moments as well. But the more experience you have, the more you can have that to the back of your mind and think, okay, stay calm, I can do this, and I will.
Yeah, that final race of the year, waiting to find out whether race control would decide something penalty-wise that would have given us an incredible scramble at the second part of that race, and then the message came through that Yuki Tsunoda would get the penalty, and that Norris was then into count down the laps mode. It's not over until you've won it. Incredibly close championship if you consider that over 24 rounds we had the top three separated by 13 points in the end. Amazing Formula One season. We went all the way to the very end. And we'll do it all again this year with an 11th team, and you're looking at Sergio Perez going back out there to put another lap on the board with 28 minutes of the session to go.
Yeah, good to see Checo getting back out. So he did one long run on a sort of race-style run. He's propping up the times there in 11th place, 3 seconds away from the pace. But having been in the pits again, another lengthy-ish stint in the pits, but Cadillac back out, and hopefully that was just a routine bit of a setup change or something going on there for Checo, and he can get back out and keep learning for this new team. I do think there's going to be real benefit this year, especially in the first half of the year, in having two really competitive drivers in your team pushing each other. So you look at Cadillac, great experience, Checo and Valtteri. Even if they're at the back, they'll be looking at each other, they'll be working together in unison. They're not going to be hiding data from each other in that position. They're going to be, if one finds something, that'll be shared across both cars, you'd have thought, and really pushing together. If you've got quite a big difference between the teammates and one driver's nailed on and the other one's scratching their heads trying to find performance, you're not helping the team move forward. You're a one-car team in the same way as if you look at Aston Martin, they're a one power unit team. They can't look at anyone else for help. If you're Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll's a little bit away, or vice versa, then you're left basically to your own devices to keep working. I think that would be part of the job for Hadjar, to get close to Verstappen, to figure things out as well, and be able to help in terms of setup and in terms of energy management and everything else in this complex season.
Yeah, working together as a unit is going to be absolutely vital, and the gains both of the development race, but the understanding of how to execute entire weekends is going to improve obviously as we go. See a couple of the tyre marbles off the racing line. The racing line that Sergio Perez is on, heading down to turn number 1. You see underside of the floor still striking a little bit, but nowhere near where we used to be. Very bumpy down to turn 1. Clearance of the ride height for this year. You can see no more Venturi tunnels underneath the car, sucking the car to the ground. A wide turn in that everyone seems to have adopted these years. In recent years, mimicking we've seen from Kimi Antonelli, who still seems to be as wide as possible, certainly on his way into turn 4 and his way into turn 11.
Perez on a better lap, finding a little bit of time. Rake is back in the cars, which was such a classic thing setup-wise for years and years, and it went away with the ground effect as you just tried to keep the whole floor of the car pinned to the ground. That's now back. So the front of the car, the floor is very low, and that's where you sometimes see it striking out. The back of the car is then raised to try and create a little bit more angle for the wings and the upper surfaces, to try and channel that bit of airflow as well out of the back into the diffuser. So that's going to be a big area of setup, I think, is trying to maximise your ride heights, particularly on the back of the car. The front is still going to be, I think, basically pinning it to the floor quite well, but then trying to set up with raising that rear. You can't see it so much on the Cadillac, actually. They look like they've got a fairly low rear end, but some of the other cars have got a much more raised rear, which would naturally give you a little bit more front end as well.
The Red Bull was always the one that was dramatic.
It was a classic Newey trait, wasn't it?
It was.
And actually, the Aston Martin, when it was out on circuit, it looked like it had plenty of that in as well. And there was a real difference of approach in the sort of 2017 to 2021 era, where Red Bull and Mercedes were so close, and Mercedes was a little bit flatter. The Red Bull had the high rake rear end, and they were both generating downforce. It'll be another area of development and setup where teams will basically go down a path and then probably fairly well stick to it, unless they really decide to revert to something else.
Looking down into the McLaren garage, Oscar Piastri is picking up this afternoon. George Russell will be in the Mercedes. Isaac Hadjar's continuing all day in the Red Bull. So that's very good news for him, because if this was his morning session, it was basically wiped out by the problems that they've had. So he will be hoping that there's a fix and he's able to get out there later on. Everyone else appears to be swapping. Lewis Hamilton's going to be in the car. Carlos Sainz is going to replace Alex Albon in the Williams. Liam Lawson, from no longer watching at race control, will be behind the wheel of the Racing Bulls. Lance Stroll in for Aston Martin. Ollie Behrman will be in for Haas, and then it will be Borgletto in for Hulkenberg, Colapinto in for Gasly, and Valtteri Bottas will be behind the wheel of the Cadillac. Is our information at the start of the day. Can always change for whatever reason, but at the moment, I believe that only Isaac Hadjar will be continuing if they can get a satisfactory repair for that.
I do feel like when we have this difference between the two Red Bull drivers, now there's no guarantee that that's going to happen again this season with Hadjar joining Verstappen. It does often feel like the second one gets the raw end of the deal in terms of missing track time as well, just to make matters worse. And I'm absolutely confident that is just a coincidence at Red Bull, and there's nothing more at play. I'm not cynical like that at all, but it does just seem like when you're a driver and you're desperate for the laps, like Hadjar will be now, you just want to have a good one. And honestly, if Max misses some laps, it's a shame for the team, but it might help bring Isaac slightly closer to his teammate, or even give him an advantage compared to his teammate. You don't want to see your teammate in trouble. It's just bad news for the team. But if there is trouble, of course you don't want it to be you. You want to be the one gathering the knowledge and then trying to impart some of that back to the team and keep it. But so often, I remember Liam Lawson last year as well. So he actually did the fewest laps of anyone in pre-season testing last year, but he only did, in fairness, 6 less than Max. Both Red Bulls were at the bottom. But then we went to Melbourne, and he had a really troubled run through free practice as well. Started the year badly, only had one more race with the team, and he was gone. And you think, oh, he's had the least laps of anyone, and he's had issues through Melbourne practice. Just think, oh, he's a driver that really needs the time. And Hadjar right now is in a similar boat. An issue last week, and was it a hydraulic issue that the Red Bull had with him on day 2? Day 1 here, and he's only on 13 laps in his morning. Hopefully he can get back out and have a smooth afternoon. At least he won't be tired. At least he'll be feeling physically fresh for the afternoon. Basically a half day for him.
Always looking on the bright side of life, Jolyon Palmer. That's what they say.
Famous for it.
Yeah, exactly. 21 minutes to go. We're concluding the first part of the day. There'll be an hour's lunch break. We'll be back for another 4 hours. With Crofty and Anne opening up. And then we'll be back under the floodlights later on. Here's Alex Albon with another lock-up for the collection. Carlos Sainz in the car for the second session of the day. A couple of bites of the cherry. And eventually turning it in. go back to the active aero on the main straight. Front wing as well as rear wing. Hammer on the brakes, bang down through the gears. Kimi Antonelli moving on to another lap. This will be lap number 66 of his session.
So he's opening up turn 2 quite well this time. I've been surprised when we saw that Leclerc lap as well, how much track drivers were using out of turn 1, which then makes the traction zone through 2 and 3 really tricky. Antonelli opening it up slightly more, and we go through turn 4. Now into the faster sweeping section 5 and 6. See on a not full deployment mode at the moment to be that far away in the first sector. Jumping on the gas up the hill. Neat and tidy for Antonelli. And so much talk is about qualifying pace, isn't it? It has been for years. If you can recharge well and have a good, consistent race run, he's going to get pinged for track limits when that counts in the Grand Prix. The cars are narrow, aren't they? So your previous references for where you could be, you got to shift it over by 20 centimeters, 10 centimeters. It's amazing how far it is. Drivers generally, but particularly Kimi, can abuse the track limits in areas that you never would have previously thought. But yeah, if you can get the recharge, you might not be the quickest over one lap where you can have full deployment, but in the race, when you can keep going, and then you maybe use your overtake mode efficiently in the race as well to clear slower cars in traffic, you might not look great at this stage. You might not look great on Saturday in Melbourne, but by Sunday, you actually realise we've got a really competitive race car.
Kimi Antonelli with Alex Albon directly ahead of him. There is Pete Bonington, who we were speaking about earlier on. Second season with the driver ahead. To the world champion, Lando Norris, continuing his run with the aero rakes on the car. Yeah, just to reiterate that we have a slightly shorter car by 20 centimetres, slightly narrower car by 10 centimetres, and the weight reduced by 30 kg for this season. And the car's weighed without the tyres as well, so you won't see the dramatic need for pickup to pick up any old gubbins at the end of the race as well.
I like that. I think the old George Russell Spa race, where Mercedes were underway, he dramatically won the race with the one stop, but it was such a long-ranging one stop. Mercedes argued that he'd just taken too much rubber off the tyre, and then at Spa, not into third. Oh, he does it!
Kimi Antonelli.
Hey, well, they said you'd be overtaking in different places. Can Albon come back through? Could this be an absolute dogfight between the Go on.
Pass and repass.
Hold it back. No, but you got to hold it back there because there's another long straight coming. Is the Williams too slow in that corner? I'm not sure. Is that just a little taster? Has that whetted your appetite?
Enjoyed it. Kimi Antonelli's looking at the left-hand mirror to see where Alex Albon is.
Inside of 13. That's what, if you're gonna be not deploying energy through a fast corner there, you could be caught napping, couldn't you, by someone being a bit opportunistic. I like the idea of that. I've lost my train of thought to what I was saying before now.
It's all right, we enjoyed the overtake. Didn't get it with Lando earlier on, did get it with Kimi. Make our way through the second straight zone. And then the full downforce with the full aero. Wing shut, the full downforce, and then you get to the straight zone on the other side of Lock-Up City, which is turn 10. Well, this time. So they did a 41.6 last time around. Charles Leclerc's out there, he's done a 39.1. Best lap of the day, 33.7 so far. Set the track temperature up in the 40s. Air temperature is 28 degrees.
So Leclerc has done a load of quali sim running earlier on. No idea how much fuel, but certainly a full energy deploying lap. And loads of just out and one push or maybe two push laps. And the car looked good and he's top of the time. Since then he's done a 15 lap stint and another 15 lap stint, and now he's done 8 laps on this. So it's like they're doing the first stint of a Grand Prix, maybe. 57 laps for the Grand Prix. If it was a classic two-stop in Bahrain, you'd maybe look at 15 on a C3, and the lap times are in the 39s, so they are a fair way away from his top time, about 6 seconds, but consistently lapping. The tyres don't look like they're falling away too much in 15 laps. No one else has done stints that long. We've had Antonelli do a couple of 11-lap stints. Gasly's done 10 on some longer runs, but Leclerc's running his tyres longer than anyone. So over lunch, we'll have a good look through and see what that's doing. See if we're going to find some proper deg this year or not.
Yeah. Teams will be learning with every lap that they run. 15 minutes to go of this opening session of day one. Updates being brought all the time. The development race for this year is going to be absolutely key as Esteban Ocon fights it through the duration of turn number 4. From the Haas to the other American team on the grid, Sergio Perez heading over the bumps down to turn number 1. And another lockup. Takes the run-up area and rejoins once again as he learns the braking capability of the first Cadillac Formula 1 car.
Massive lockup, quite bumpy down there. I wonder if he's just arrived with 15 kph more than he was prepared to there, having done a lot of more steady runs. I wonder if he's had a little bit more deployment, and suddenly he's lost in the break point. As we see Ocon fighting on that really difficult traction zone coming through turn 11, fully loaded up. There's a lot for the drivers going on here. The cars are a handful. They're having to really work for a lap time.
Yeah, it's going to be spectacular for us, but there's a long to-do list behind the wheel for Formula 1 this year. Ocon slightly beyond the boundary at turn 15.
I think driver and engineer relationship is going to be so important as well this year. For those that have got long-running understandings, I think that will really help, because there's going to have to be a lot of feedback from race engineer to driver. It's a technical sport this year, and to be in that loop, especially early on when the drivers are trying to figure out in the cockpit exactly what's doing what's most efficient, what's not working for them. Plus you've got the use of boost, you've got overtake, recharge as well, your different power unit modes to contend with, and basically your old things, your setup, your tyre deck, your run plans as well that the race engineers are going to be doing. And that's going to be a lot harder this year as well, with outlaps being different, trying to make sure you start your lap with 100% energy. I think anything less than that and you're not going to be doing a great flying lap by all accounts. So you've got to be so precise with your charging to prepare an outlap.
Yeah, they are pouring over their outlaps, making sure that they're in the perfectly fully charged state. Otherwise, no matter how good a large percentage of the lap is, you'll find yourself in trouble come sector 3.
Early on in this testing phase, some of the drivers are spending more time going through outlaps than they are flying laps. That's how important the outlaps are going to be. I'm sure they'll figure it out in time, but that's the ground zero that we're all starting with these cars. Making sure that you get tyres in the right temp, but also battery at the right level now is just so critical, and it's super sensitive as well. If you're not quite there, you're nowhere.
Another lock-up for Alexander Albon into turn 10. He completes the last of his morning and early afternoon's work in the blue Williams, and again taking the outside line. That'll be as rubbered in as the racing line by the end of this test.
Will be by the Williams. He's been off a few times, hasn't he? It looked a handful when I was trackside earlier on. I mean, he did nearly drop it in front of me at turn 4 on the way in. Probably on a downshift that he just caught and had a big old rear lock. Then it's front locking, and generally trying to slow down that Williams doesn't look particularly easy. 4th quickest, for what it's worth. I don't think they're particularly happy down there. Remember, Williams missed all of Barcelona, so in terms of the learning curve, they are behind everyone, or they were before they piled on the miles last week. So still trying to figure things out and not particularly happy with life.
Yeah, Flo Viz, the rear of the car, around the diffuser there. Williams missing a maximum of 3 days of running that they could have done. Did a shakedown at Silverstone. Very brief shakedown at Silverstone, and then joined and set a huge ton of mileage, making up for lost time in the first official test. But still trying to make up. Obviously, the Aston Martin car then became the story. Armstrong saying they were 4 seconds off. That grabbed the headlines, but Williams is still making up for lost time, as they have been waiting for this regulation set so keenly, looking forward to it for years, and all the focus going into 2026. Albon continues to turn 4 on those C3 tyres. Albon now on 55 laps, so he's approaching the race distance, which is 57.
At some point, the talk stops, and that point is in 2 weeks' time, really, isn't it? When we've had for the whole of last year, plenty of teams saying we turn the taps off, we're all focused on next year. Well, now you've got to deliver the performance. New set of regs, new opportunities for everyone. And the likes of Aston Martin, the amount of infrastructure they've put in, personnel they've put in at that team, they still have a 2-time world champion behind the wheel. They've now got Adrian Newey there. Honda have come back and by all accounts are a little bit behind the curve on the power unit side. But this is not what they intended, not what Lawrence Stroll intended when he poured the money in to make them a well-financed, hopefully, top team. And they've been in the garage still most of the morning with Fernando Alonso, just 28 laps for him. And Williams as well, if they're not able to pick up from where they were last year, it's really disappointing because of the amount of time they spent last year already turning off the taps and working on this car. They signed Carlos Sainz, did a great job last year. Albon picked up his own game, really strong driver lineup.
And we're going through the systems check, I believe, at the moment. So we had the yellow flag, then we had the virtual safety car deployed. Now we've moved to the red flag. As we check everything is working and the information is being relayed to teams on the pit wall, in the garages. The information correctly being displayed for the drivers on their steering wheels as well. And that's why we've cycled through from yellow to VSC to red in the final 10 minutes of the session. Will have been communicated in advance to the teams, so they know this is coming. There was a teeny tiny bit of confusion with that practice start at the end of the running last week, where some thought they were going one by one, and some saw the 5 red lights and they were like,
just got carried away.
Let's get on with it then.
Rush of blood to the head, right, let's go.
Different pages, I think the grid was on at that stage.
Well, made for an entertaining start.
I enjoyed it.
I am intrigued and looking forward to the start in Melbourne, because that is one of the key areas that are really undeveloped at the moment. Teams trying to spool up a turbo, but they now don't have the MGUH to do, so trying to get the cars ready for a start, for some sort of launch. We could see some huge inconsistencies. There may well be some changes before Melbourne, which there may well have to be some changes before Melbourne at the moment. The teams will be trying to do their best to troubleshoot that in the meantime, and this is why we have 3 pre-season tests, a shakedown in Barcelona and 2 weeks in Bahrain. Figure things out and try and make everything as raceable as possible. Hey, what's a green light and a red flag?
There we go, we draw the red flag. Having done our systems check, we get a green light at the end of the pit lane. If you weren't with us last week, we've got the new warning lights as well on the wing mirrors. You just saw that with Lando Norris. Pause back out onto the circuit with 6.5 minutes to go.
Well, so the red flag's back out. In it goes. Play on.
The green light's on, they're always looking at the light.
Oh,
the
no.
light was on.
Send them to the stewards. 10-place grid drop.
Out there we went at the end. And track clear is the message on our race control screen. Rolling start is the, so we are cycling through everything. So teams have been told it's a rolling start procedure now.
Let's see how this goes then.
Fred Vasseur, team principal at Ferrari. And Ferrari, the last time we had a regulations change into 2022, started the campaign with a 1-2. A little bit of unreliability. And Red Bull were able to shed the weight. They became the dominant team for an extended period of time. And McLaren taking their crown for the last 2 runnings of the Formula 1 World Championship. So we are effectively in a mock restart here with a rolling start to be practiced when they come across the line.
The Williams leads the McLaren and the Mercedes. Peak drama. Gathers the pack. Are we going to, surely there's got to be, your best chance of an overtake is going to be at this restart if you're Lando Norris. Tucked in, get as close as possible. Keep your battery topped up. There's going to be a lot more to these rolling starts as well than there has been.
I like the fact you're doing a bit of a race sim as well for the commentary.
We've all got to dial in, buddy. This is pre-season testing for everyone.
Round the final 2 corners of the racetrack, Alex Albon, across the line we go, active aero, and immediately Kimi Antonelli alongside Lando Norris, and the red flag is out once again. Yellow flag, and now the red. According to our timing coach, so we hit the wrong button there, but there we are, we did the rolling start with Alex Albon, ahead of Lando Norris, ahead of Kimi Antonelli, ahead Sergio Perez.
Less dramatic than the standing start.
Yellow flag is being waved. Double yellow, track sector 17 is what we're simulating at the moment. No reason for that at the side of the track. We're just cycling through the systems, making sure everything's working. After you, no after you, no after you. And eventually, Kimi Antonelli moves on by.
What's your big takeaway from the first morning then?
Well, it's been interesting to do. So we obviously did an hour of running, and that was just the novelty of seeing the cars on track. We talked about how a regulation change could totally reset the order, but it does appear that we've got a big 4 once again from seeing the handling of the cars. Obviously, you take testing with a pinch of salt, but it does appear that we've got a big 4 once more, at least a strong morning for Ferrari, for McLaren and for Mercedes. What we saw last week with Max Verstappen and Red Bull suggested he is very much going to be there and thereabouts, and all of the rivals were making positive noises about their power unit built in conjunction with Ford. There's been so much chatter about what the drivers are doing. I thought it was really interesting when you went trackside that you were like, well, yeah, they look darty. They look like they're attacking. I have to send you to different corners across the course of the test for a complete sample size.
Just to see if there's one where they don't look good.
Just to see.
Oh no, the cars look bad at turn 1.
It looks fine to turn 1. I went out and wandered down there earlier on after the hit in the pit lane. Attacking down into turn 1. Now, where have we got to at this stage of proceedings? Are we lining up for a practice start? Well, no. The message from race control that we're doing so, but Sergio Perez has parked it on pole all the same. So we're going to get some practice starts from the grid at the end of the session. Don't know if we'll get any lights, but that's the joy of testing.
Well, Albon's bailed into the pit, so he doesn't fancy a go at this. We're left with 3. I like that Perez has chucked the Cadillac straight on pole position. They're all lined up together. Go on, give us some light. Ah, no. There we go. Perez goes, and they'll all find their own time. Here the revs rise as everyone just strains to find some pre-start revs, and that is an absolute oodle of wheel spin for Antonelli getting away.
Well, same thing for Checo as well, laying down the lines. And the revs really rise this year. I was only doing a couple of practice starts earlier on, just creeping on his starts at the end of the pit lane.
Creeping, moving forward.
Yeah, moving forward a little bit.